Godzilla is one of the cinematic characters with the most different versions. For more than 60 years we have seen various films, mangas, comics, shorts, merchandise and other products that often reinvent the appearance and origin of the kaiju. While many of these versions are beloved, there are some so bad or that they drastically break the concept of the franchise that Toho often pretends they don't exist. In this video we are going to list the 7 strangest versions of Godzilla. Before starting, I must clarify that this video is not a top video, so the posts are not arranged in a specific order. Since Shin Godzilla debuted in 2019, it has become one of the fans' favorite versions. Here, Godzilla went through a series of evolutions where he increased his abilities and power. The main form of this Godzilla is already very different from usual, and it has even been mentioned that it is the closest thing to a zombie Godzilla. Still, his second form is even stranger and breaks with all previous versions we had known of the character. Normally, in movies we usually witness an adult Godzilla, but in Shin Godzilla we see how this one, after feeding on tons of radioactive waste, became a sea creature, which emerged to the surface converted into a strange crawling being that later it develops legs. From its first appearance, this kaiju's appearance proved to be unpleasant. Not only is its appearance itself repulsive, but blood spurts from its gills as it tries to breathe. Their dead eyes and misshapen teeth are very repulsive. Actually, Toho managed to represent what a creature disfigured by radiation would be, and this monster is part of what makes Shin Godzilla great. In fact, this appearance served as the basis for Singular Point's Godzilla Aquatus, and due to the great appreciation that fans have for this version, rest assured that we will see more Godzillas inspired by this design in the future. Fusions are one of the easiest ways to make fans happy, or, at least, to attract an audience through the excitement of seeing two characters combined into one. Dragon Ball is an excellent example of this, but even in the work of Akira Toriyama we are shown that making the wrong fusion can be very counterproductive. In this position we have one of the latter. King Godzilla, created as an original character for the Godzilla manga King of the Mozenters, is the result of upgrading a Godzillasaurus with the genes of Ghidorah, Batra, and Biollante. This strange being was created by Dr. Oniyama, a mad scientist who sought to dominate the world. Its story is quite simple. After Gojira eliminated almost all of his kaiju drive, Oniyama combined the DNA he had collected from Godzilla's cells with the DNA of King Ghidorah, Biollante, and Batra. He then used his technology to speed up the development of the new creature, naming it King Godzilla. The mad scientist freed him in Japan, where Godzilla, who was weakened from so many fights, confronted him on the edge of a volcano. Its design is not only bizarre, but it is downright ugly. Ghidorah's heads turned into arms break a lot of the character's aesthetics. In case you're wondering, that mouth on his chest is Biollante's head, which he can use to attack his rival. The Heisei era of Godzilla is a fan favorite, and I think making a hybrid of the villains from the movies was an interesting idea. It's a shame that the final result was so bizarre. Perhaps with a better drawing, the design would have been much better. The Godzilla comic was a compendium of stories in manga format which included one titled, Warning from G. In this story we see how after an attack by Godzilla in which the Japanese army was defeated, Takayama, a martial arts master, decided to confront the kaiju hand-to-hand. He used the martial art known as Kappo, which consisted of defeating enemies with a single blow. Surprisingly and against all odds, Takayama managed to defeat Godzilla at the cost of his life. The soul of the kaiju, which could not bear the thought of being defeated by a mere human, took over the body of Takayama's unborn son. Little baby Godzilla grew up and his mother took him to visit his late father's grave. Upon being in front of it, Godzilla's soul recovered its memories and felt a deep hatred for Takayama. In revenge, he attacked his mother and after knocking her down, repeatedly hit her on the head with a rock, until she finally died. If everything I just told you doesn't seem bizarre enough, we see a panel where the woman's soul meets her family in the afterlife. Here it was revealed that this Godzilla was a manifestation of Earth that sought to make humanity stop feeling hatred, since that negative energy was rotting the world. The worst thing is that Godzilla's hatred after becoming a baby accelerated the destruction of the Earth, so the earthly world and the spiritual world would be destroyed eventually. Godzilla, 98, Zilla or whatever you want to call him, is recognized as the strangest version of Godzilla, and he truly deserves that title. Before the release of this film, Godzilla was a species of dinosaur mutated by radiation. Instead, this version was born after the French army tested nuclear bombs in the Pacific, where they irradiated the egg of an iguana, causing it to mutate in this way. According to the producers of the film, the decision was made to give him this appearance because it was something more similar to what a lizard mutated by radiation would be than the typical design of the character. Looking so different from other incarnations of Godzilla, in addition to complaints about its poor visual effects, Toho and fans in general rejected this version. This rejection led Toho to rename this version Zilla and make him a kaiju independent of Godzilla, as they considered him a stain on the history of their popular monster. Luckily, time has been kind to Zilla, and his participation in the IDW publishing comics led to new fans, and some of the old ones too, taking a liking to this Godzilla. We return to the Shin Godzilla movie because we have to talk about the enormous cliffhanger at the end of the film. As you already know, shortly before Godzilla was frozen, he began an evolution process where he began to divide into small humanoid beings. Many believe that this latest evolution was Godzilla's answer to fighting humanity directly. Unfortunately, the film concluded before these beings could separate themselves from Godzilla's body. Still, thanks to various conceptual arts, we know that these would have a human form, but retaining Godzilla's spines, in addition to the fact that they do not have eyes. Some sketches even go so far as to show that these creatures would continue to evolve until they developed more human features, characteristics that would differentiate them from their generation. The Godzilla comic is a manga series that was published in Japan years ago, and it is really very difficult to see good quality images of this work. Here we saw self-contained stories of the King of the Monsters, many of which were outside the continuity of the films. In the story called Monster Warrior Godzilla, we have the version that takes this position. This story depicts Godzilla and other Toho Kaiju as humanoid warriors from an alternate reality who were at war against humans. Here, humanity is a race of conquerors that seeks to take over the world of the Kaiju, since the Earth is about to die. Godzilla is a warrior with a design that looks like something out of an RPG. In addition to that, he uses swords and other weapons to fight against beings such as Moguera, Mechagodzilla and Mechani-Kong. If the design is not enough to surprise you, let me tell you that this Godzilla had a certain romantic intention with the spirit of a tree which had the appearance of a human woman. This is one of the strangest Godzilla stories you'll find. I know that at the beginning of the video I commented that I had not arranged these positions in a specific order, but in this particular case, I decided to leave the strangest Godzilla at the end. Again, coming from the Godzilla comic, we have an extremely bizarre story that, if it weren't for the fact that it was written as a parody, would be much more controversial than it actually is. In Godzilla New Comedy, we see a group of scientists who created several clones of Godzilla to try to defeat the King of the Monsters. These scientists were not very skilled, and the DNA samples they had of the kaiju are not revealed, but when they hear the names of the clones, they will get an idea of what the samples were. The first clone was made of cancer cells, likely caused by Godzilla's natural radiation. As you can see, this one had a completely disfigured body. The second clone, which appeared to be made of tires, was composed of white blood cells. Finally, and the incarnation that takes this position was a Godzilla that only had the Kaiju's head and its tail. At first glance, you may not notice anything strange with this Godzilla, but to notice the problem, let's misinterpret its design. If they thought it was shaped like a snake, it means they are not so bad-minded. YouTube prohibits me from mentioning his name for obvious reasons, so I ask you to read the name on the screen and you alone deduce what it is. As I said, this story was written as an official parody, so yes, this Godzilla is completely canon and Toho could use it again in some project if they wanted, although I doubt that a story like that would be well received today. The Godzilla mangas feature some of the most bizarre stories of the kaiju, so there are still many other strange versions that we don't mention here. Tell us if you already knew these strange Godzillas and which other one you would add to this list. We are the